and we saved a really special, important one for last but not least, Rayn Barnett, the incredible photographer, groundbreaking, and also in an incredible band, which we'll talk about in a little bit as well. So format, we're gonna ask some questions, we're gonna have a conversation, we're gonna see some of Sherry's incredible photographs, and then I will open it up for questions towards the end for the students who are piling in right now. So first, thank you so much for coming, Sherry.
Absolutely.
This is a long time in the making.
Okay, thank you.
So I guess the first question I have is what drew you to photography, and especially rock photography, in a time when there weren't really a lot of women doing it?
Well, that's true. There weren't a lot of women, but I didn't think about that. I actually didn't think about that. I was just kind of doing my own thing, and I was going to school for music, and I was just getting so inspired by a lot of the current artists of the time, and I was in high school, and I had the opportunity. I was in Manhattan, I was in New York, I was going to, I was majoring in classical guitar, but I was realizing that I wasn't going to be a classical musician per se, because first of all, I wasn't suited to be a soloist. I just, later on I got into bands, but I really felt more like I wanted to be part of the scene that was starting to happen in Manhattan. And so fortunately, I had a very liberal mom, and she was a dancer and a songwriter, and she'd been on the radio. And so what happened was, she allowed me, I'd go to school, and then afterwards in the evenings, I'd go down to Greenwich Village, and I'd go to the clubs, and I'd see these artists that, what was so amazing was I had full access to them. They didn't have marketers and people, handlers that kept you from being around these artists. And these were artists like Bonnie Raitt starting out, and Jerry Jeff Walker, and oh my God, just tons of people. Chris Christopherson, twice I photographed him, basically after school in the at the Gaslight Cafe in Greenwich Village and the Bitter End. And so I was there all the time. And just because I was following my passion for the music, and I do need to say my dad had cameras, even though he hadn't planned for me to be a photographer. I just ended up being interested in learning how to shoot them. And the very earliest ones were just, they didn't even have a focus button. You just, I got a lot of early blurry pictures.
Did you have a brownie?
I had a blue brownie. Anyone who knows me knows that I do care about the color blue. So, I had that to begin with. And but then kind of morphed into my first Nikon camera. And I've stayed with Nikons ever since.
So how was it in that scene at that time as a woman? And did you have other mentors then as a teenager, or did you have them like in your 20s, or did you just blaze your own trail?
Well, I had not mentors per se, but I had photographers whose work I really admired. I think they were all male photographers. I just wasn't, I never even until now thought about that. But there was a photographer named David Garr who was shooting the whole folk scene in the village, and was shooting everything that was happening culturally, and as far as the activists there and the musicians and the protest songs artists. And he was very real. It was photojournalism. It wasn't like they weren't set up pictures in a studio. He was capturing these artists in a very, very real way, and I loved that. It was very very earthy, very organic the way he shot. And I thought, I want to do that because that's what I feel. I like to either, capture the spirit of the artist or the musician, or, and that would be off stage, but then on stage, capture those musical moments that grabbed me. And I think also being a musician, I could feel the music. I could feel like where I wanted to shoot. I would get a sense when the artist would be emoting, when would be the best time. Because also, unlike digital photography now, where you can shoot hundreds of shots. And, you're bound to get something. You're bound to get something. And, I love digital photography now, but back then we were shooting film. We had 36 frames to shoot on one roll of film, and film was expensive. And I certainly wasn't making much money. None of us starting out were. So it was like, you needed to get, in those 36 pictures, you needed to get a lot of good shots. You needed to get the shot, but you needed other ones too. And sometimes when I'd shoot a show and there was an opening act and then the headliner, I'd spend half the roll of film on the opening act, which is ironically what I did, and sadly what I did the one time I saw Janis Joplin, because I spent half the roll of film on the opening act. It's crazy now, because I sure wish I had shot multiple rolls. I wish I'd shot color, but I only shot black and white. And her opening act was the Paul Butterfield Blues Band, that were a very credible band, but it was Janis Joplin. So, yeah.
Well, I'm wondering, it sort of leads me to this question, is what's one of the most memorable concerts that you ever shot for you?
Okay. Memorable concerts, obviously, like in my top 5 has to be Janis. That was absolutely amazing. There was no one like her. Just, the dynamic from the moment she hit the stage was just unbelievable. The energy just went up and stayed there. Also, of course, Tina Turner, and Tina Turner was my first professional shoot. So go figure. I mean, the most amazing thing. But later on, seeing David Bowie, and I only shot him once for a television show I was the photographer for. But I have to say, he walked out on stage and it was like the room levitated. That's what it felt like. I felt so blessed, because I was so grateful, because he was singing one song, and he wasn't lip syncing, but he was singing to a track, and he had to do the song over and over and over. And I'm going, another time. I was just in heaven, because he was so magical.
What song was it? Do you remember?
It was a song called "Never Let Me Down."
Oh, yeah.
It was late 80s.
Yeah.
I was shooting for a show called Top of the Pops. And Top of the Pops was a show that started out in the UK back in the 60s, and the Beatles were the first artists on the show. But then I don't know why this happened, but they only came here for one season. And that one season, it was 1987, and they did a US version of Top of the Pops. And so anybody who was, at the top or near the top of the charts for those 13 weeks were on the show. So it was a great gig for me, because I got to see Bowie. I got to see, Roy Orbison, Katie Lang, Joe Cocker, Natalie Cole, Depeche Mode, In Excess. The list goes on. And it was, and what was interesting was that I got to, they all played live, which I loved. It wasn't a lip syncing show. And not only did they play live, but then I set up a portrait studio in the back, and I got to do like candid portraits of most everybody. And so it was really remarkable.
So what's the difference for you between, and what do you enjoy more, shooting in the moment of live performances, or those sort of staged candid things, or album covers and things like that, and why?
Okay, for me, the live performance is it's just so invigorating, and it's a connection. When I'm especially when I'm up front, or even close to being up front, and I've got a long zoom lens, I'm like right there. I'm right in their face. It's like front row center, and the dynamic back and forth of the energy and the immediacy of it is just an incredible experience and opportunity. Because if I go to a show now and it's not, it's not because I'm jaded or you know, it's if I just go and sit at a concert and I don't do anything, I'm not like, I don't have credentials to shoot. Sometimes I don't know what to do with myself because I feel like, you know, and I want to, you know, be engaged in it in the way that I've, you know, spent so many years being. So, but as far as studio work, I haven't done a lot. I never did a lot of it because I was so drawn to the live performance. But I've shot some covers that, you know, turned out really great, and I'm proud of them. And, you know, on a more personal level, I love shooting photographs of people that aren't staged where, you know, I capture something, you know, capture an essence that maybe somebody else doesn't capture. Or, even with friends where they go, oh, no, I take really bad pictures, and then I snap some of them, and they go, oh, wow, that's the best picture I've seen of myself. And it's not from ego. It's just there's a thing that I guess some gift I have that I'm able to do that and do it quickly and in the moment.
So have you ever had a shoot go completely wrong?
Yeah.
And what happened? Like, how did it go wrong? What happened?
Oh, there are a couple of ways that in the old film days that could go wrong. Like you get to a shoot and realize you forgot to bring film. That's happened a couple of times. That was, you know, that's done. But you know, I have a shoot that I tell about working with Nina Simone, and you know, I can tell it now. You know, she's no longer here. But also, on top of that, I think she would know what happened. I was shooting an album cover for Verve Polygram Records, and I did several different covers for them. I did a wonderful artist named Marlena Shaw, who was just absolutely delightful, and Shirley Horn, another jazz artist. But Nina, of course, being the kind of the upper echelon of these artists, we set up everything for her to come to the shoot, and I was shooting at the time. I had a home studio, literally in my living room, and we waited for her for like 4 hours, and you know, everybody's running out of time. I had an assistant, a makeup person, everything, and so she shows up 4 hours late. We had already been playing the piano that we were going to have her play. You know, we were singing, and so she shows up. She's in a really bad mood, and she says, "You have a white sheet?" And I'm thinking, well, it's my house, so fortunately I had a white sheet. And she says, I don't want to wear anything except the white sheet. Okay. And she's known as Dr. Nina, and so I said, Dr. Nina, I'll find you a white sheet. So I get the white sheet, and she literally stands there and starts disrobing in front of everybody. And so we're kind of going, oh, okay, Nina, thank you. And then we did the shoot, and she was in a really bad mood, hated the makeup artist, thought he made her look like red like an Indian. You know, she was so rude. And fortunately, I had what was for me the best lighting person in the world. And she made this shoot happen with me, and that album cover ended up being one of the best album cover I've ever shot. So you never know what's going to come out of it. But I don't mean to rag on Nina, because then I get a call from her manager like a couple of years later, and he says, oh, you know, are you available? Dr. Nina would like you to do a private shoot at her Hollywood apartment. And we'd like to get a poster for the Olympia Opera House in Paris. And so I said, sure, you know. And I'm not combative, but I'm ready for this time, you know. I'm ready for anything. And then I get there, and she greets me, and it's like she is in the best mood. And she's so happy, and she's like, you know, anything for me. And I said, you know, let's do this, let's do that. And before I left, I said, so, Dr. Nina, I said, you know, you weren't in as good a mood last time I met with you. And she says, yeah, I know. And I said, well, did something happen? And she says, yeah, I got the IRS off my back. Now, there was more than just the IRS she got off her back, I can pretty much tell you. But she was just delightful. And then she used, you know, my pictures, you know, really up until the time time of her passing. So I was really honored by that. So that was it went wrong, but then it went right.
Sometimes when things go wrong, they go right. Right.
Yeah.
So, do you enjoy like just shooting, like from your instinct? I mean, I guess it's the same thing between live and these planned out shots. Or do you like doing things that are really planned out and designed in some way?
Well, I do less of that. You know, I really do trust my instinct. You know, and it's interesting because I went to school for music, but you know, when I wanted to kind of bring home the music with me and create these images, they were initially for me just to remember. You know, to remember the feeling of the show, the concert, the artist. Um, but I was totally self-taught as a photographer. And actually the secret is since birth, I don't see out of my left eye. So I'm a one-eyed photographer. Well, I didn't even think about that till later on. You know, it takes me a while. But you know, I just always, I guess, I didn't know, you know, what people were talking about when they talked about composition, because whatever I did, it just seemed to be what they called good composition. It was the right thing to do, you know. I mean, you know, later on there were technical things to learn about photography, and especially in this day and age, you know, all the digital programs and softwares. And the only classes I took in the early days, though, when it was the days of film, I took darkroom classes so I could process my own film and do my own prints, and spend a lot of time in the
chemicals to put in the trays and that sort of thing.
yeah, I spent a lot of time in the dark. But it was always magical to me. I didn't want to know about the chemicals at all, you know, the content and what made that happen. I just went, whoa, look at this coming up out of the water, you know. And, you know, it was always very exciting until it got tiring.
Well, so you talked a little bit about this shift, right, from film to digital, but like so has your technique changed over the years in the shift from film to digital?
I guess there's an inherent amount of change in the way you shoot, because you shoot faster, you shoot more, you know, because literally you have to keep up with everybody else too now, because there's so many more photographers that have access. And also on the you know, when you're shooting, say, a larger, you know, more marketed artist. Now, I mean, you go to a show, if you have credentials, you get at the most the first 3 songs to shoot, and then you're out of there. And you know, I come from the old school where I could shoot the whole show. The artist would emote, and you know, they'd be you know, by, you know, 3/4 of through the show, they're sweating, and they're, you know, they're at their peak of like the emotion of the show and their performance. And so it's not as interesting to me to go and shoot 3 songs and shoot as many shots as possible, because
So is that, because I've noticed that just in my life, because I'm always in the front row and I'm seeing the photographers. That shift, is that around like the publicists and stuff, like, or the artists, they don't want to see themselves like sweaty and like whatever?
I think there's just been a glut of photographers who have misused their job, because they sell photos and not caring about how the artist appears.
To like like National Enquirer kind
Well,
of
it's not
things,
even
or-
that, but it's like, for me, I want, even if an artist is emoting, I mean, I'll probably show a quick shot like of Little Richard, you know, he you know, just sweating. It's like, it's a great shot. It's a great moment of capturing him, but you know, I don't put pictures out there where people let their mouths look weird when they're singing or whatever. And I think that there have been so many people now who don't care. It's just, if they can sell a photo, they'll sell a photo.
Huh.
So
So do you think that social media, I mean, it's kind of a step to that. Do you think social media has changed music photography? And in what way?
Well, social media has changed music photography in some good ways. I mean, now people can, you can take an iPhone, a good iPhone, and you can get great shots in a small venue of your friends, of artists that, you just want to capture the moment. We didn't have those opportunities before. And so that's great. So you have the immediacy of social media, but it also is here and gone, and everybody kind of considers themselves a photographer now, or a lot of people do, who really aren't photographers. But it's funny, they all have to have photo credit, and so it's just different. That's all. I am just so grateful that I grew up at a time where there was where I had access, and I wasn't booted out after 3 songs, and I could get right up front. And when I first started, talking about photo gear too, when I first started, I had 1 camera body, 1 lens. That's basically what I had. That's what I could afford. And so a lot of my early shots, when you see Joni Mitchell in your face, I was in her face. I was right up front there. And then then I graduated to a zoom lens and another lens and another lens, so that I could capture things in different ways, and also as things progressed, artists didn't want people right up in their face or standing right in front of them. So, it's just been a gradual shift, but a good one.
Has it made it harder to make money though?
Is it hard to?
Is it harder to make money now as a photographer than before?
It's different. Yeah, it is. It is. Well, there are 2 things that happen. 2 things that happened along the way. One was, it was more free form, and I was shooting mostly for publications, and then here and there for record companies, publicists. But then it became work for hire, the big work for hire, which meant, like after I finished shooting this TV show, a guy I'd made friends with on the set worked for Universal, and he said, we'd like to hire you, to do some shooting for us. And I thought, great, I'd love to do this. And, I knew that they actually, paid probably decent money. But he said, what we want you to do is you shoot the film, and as soon as you're done with a roll of film, you just hand it to us. And it became theirs. And my name didn't even go on it. And this is what happened with a lot of people and in a lot of different areas. And it was like, no, I don't want to do that. I'll figure out a way to forge through this and continue making a career out of shooting. But that's something that happened. Wow. That kind of slowed things down.
That's really interesting.
Yeah.
So, I guess what I'd love to do is, I was going to ask you about your most iconic photos, but I think we're going to talk about them when we show them, right? But one of the other things I want to ask you is there a moment or a shot that lingers with you of like, I missed that, or I should have shot that, or I didn't get that shot right, or anything like that?
Well, there are a lot of moments like that where you're you're positioned in the wrong place. There's a show happening, and suddenly you're in a perfect place for one part of the show, or an artist that's playing an instrument like right here, and then suddenly they go to the other side of the stage, and you have no access to do it, or if you go around, you're going to miss it. Yeah. But I also, I've missed some funny thing, not funny, but by myself playing in bands, that I have been privy to having certain situations come up. Like the first band I was in, we were playing up in the Bay Area, and we were opening for Jerry Garcia. And so I'm sitting backstage tuning my guitar, and Jerry Garcia comes and sits down next to me, and he starts tuning his guitar. And I thought, oh my God, this is such a photo opportunity, but I'm supposed to be the musician here. I'm not taking pictures. So I let it go, Wow. Stuff like that. Also, Dusty Springfield came to my house to discussed doing a song with us. And we all sat around my living room, and then I thought, oh, it's, I don't want to say, oh, now, Dusty, can I take a picture of you? So, but, I kind of got over that, though. Now if we, perform with another band or another artist that, we're on the same bill. Like my original band, the Mustangs, went to Europe, and we played this huge music festival, and it was like Edie Brickell went on right before us on stage, and the Stray Cats right after. And now I know, take pictures of Edie, take pictures of the Stray Cats. Don't go, oh, I'm just playing here.
So the band that you're in now,
Yeah.
I know we're talking about our photography, but you're also in a band.
Yeah.
You're still a musician.
Yeah.
What's the band called, and what's happening with it?
Well, that's a good question. The band's name is Mustangs of the West, and we were very fortunate. I put the band back together. We had been a band earlier on as just the Mustangs, and we were very fortunate to connect with a record label here in LA called Blue Elan Records, and they supported us, and they came to us, and well, I came to them, but they put us through some moves to make sure that we were what we were and played well together and had a, and and had some sort of vibe together, and we made some magic in the studio for them. I guess so. They signed us, and we've done 3 albums, and very proud of that. Very proud of that.
Do you have any shows coming up?
We do, but we have a show, though, down in Orange County on June 6th that at a place called Spaghettini. Then we're going up north to a Performing Arts Center in Northern California. And then we're going to come down on June 7th. June 6th. What am I telling you? No, June 6th is in Orange County. And then in July, on July 26th, we're playing at the Autry Museum, which is going to be a big event for them. But the latest news that I don't think anyone here really knows, but apparently we've been asked to play on Breakfast with the Beatles on that radio show.
Congratulations, yeah.
Yeah, which is the longest running Beatles show ever. And so that's coming up on June 1st. So,
amazing.
Yeah.
So we're about to get to the pictures, but this is something I always think about because I will say I'm an amateur rock photographer. I have a massive collection of photos that I've taken. There's something about capturing that for me. As a kid, I had photos of all my people everywhere.
Yeah.
And, we talk about right now in the industry around like image versus talent and how important the image is. And what do what, as a photographer and in shooting these iconic people, just what do you think about how important image is and putting an image out there? And like, what role do you have in the creation of the myth making of the rock star kind of thing?
Well, I'm not quite sure of what my role is, except that going back to when I shoot, trying to make people look as good as they can. It's been a tricky thing over the years, especially for female performers, because in the earlier days, to be a female performer, you had to fit a certain size, a certain look that that prevented some very, very talented people from becoming popular or being known in the world as they should have been, I think. And even I'm show pictures of the Carpenters and Karen Carpenter. Poor Karen Carpenter, somebody called her fat, and it killed her because she believed it. She believed it until she was like 88 pounds looking in the mirror, and that was tragic.
Until she was dead.
Yeah, and that was tragic. I mean, her friend Dionne Warwick just said, she just couldn't imagine what Karen saw when she looked in the mirror. And but that was all, there was that whole element of women having to look a certain way. And it's interesting now because now we have all sorts of sizes of artists. I mean, seriously, and people that aren't, traditionally pretty, and I love that. I love that we now aren't like boxing people in, particularly women, and and guys didn't care that much about their image. I mean, as long as they had a pair of jeans or a torn T-shirt or whatever, for the most part, that was good to go. But the female artists had a whole other rope to climb.
Other things to live up to. So should we take a look at some of these images and tell some stories? Well, I think you hit your clicker.
And there's our Tina. Tina, yeah. This was my first professional shoot. And I was in high school, and this was down in the East Village at a place called the Electric Circus. And I had just knocked on the door of one of the underground papers that were starting up around the time, and said, "Hey, can I be your photographer?" And they were just starting out too. So they said, "Oh yeah, do you want to go see Ike and Tina Turner at the Electric Circus and shoot the show?" And of course, yes. And so this was from that. And then, I guess I get to do this. And then the bonus was that they were going to interview them the day afterwards at some hotel, which I later found out was the Chelsea Hotel, which of course was like the most famous rock and roll hotel in town there, but I didn't. So here we have this. This was quite the interview, because I have to say, well, because of the outfits, of course, but the other thing is that Tina slept through about 90% of the interview, and Ike did all the talking. And it was interesting. There's actually an amplifier, a Fender amp, sitting at the side of the bed there, and that was our newspaper, the underground newspaper, that was funded by a play that went on in the theater above the office, and the play got shut down because, quite tell, but because all the actors were doing the play in the nude. So there was quite a liberal scene happening around there. But anyway, so I was amazed that this photograph held up for all the years that it did, but these negatives held up really well, and there they are.
Interesting. They're so fabulous looking.
Yeah.
And he looks so deeply unhappy. Like, he looks what you would think of Ike Turner looking like. Like, maybe like a little mad and a little
I think he liked the fact that because she was sleeping, he got to be interviewed, that kind of thing. But here's another Tina. This is a little later. This is interestingly enough, it is also in the 70s, but it was after I had moved to California, and this is at the Coconut Grove over the old Biltmore Hotel when that was happening as a showroom. And it was still Ike and Tina. And then we went on into the 80s, and she rises. She's gotten rid of Ike, and she's on her way. And she had some downtime in between, but she resurrected herself, and it was the Private Dancer tour. What's Love Got to Do with It? And talk about one of the highlight performers ever. Tina, before with Ike and after on her own, just so dynamic.
And do you know the story of how that record got made? Just quickly.
No, tell me.
David Bowie went up to the label guy and said, Tina Turner wants to make a new record, and was like, and I think you should have her make a new record. That's the story I've heard in studying Bowie and hearing all the stuff, that he was such a fan, and such a fan of her in that moment of coming back. He helped her get a new record deal to make that album.
That's a great story. And Tiffany Naiman here has just done a book on David Bowie, by the way.
Not out yet, but yeah.
I haven't seen it yet, but I am going to get myself.
It's called Bowie in America. You'll see it. Tina's in it.
Oh, of course.
No photos, though. It's an academic book.
Great. So then that particular show was at the Forum, and she was pretty much opening for Lionel. So there he is in his glory. Now we just dip back for a second. We got Joni Mitchell. This was one of the ones where I was probably standing right in front of her. This is at the Central Park. I called it the Central Park Music Festival, although I learned later it was the Schaefer Music Festival, because it was always like what beer company was sponsoring the series. But it was this was a series where you could go see Joni Mitchell for $3, just saying. So this was Queens College, James Taylor show where he brought Joni out as a surprise guest, as an encore. And a lot of people think that I shot it when I was going to Queens College, but I was in high school. So it was just magnificent. And I mean, you know, these concerts, these shows just wouldn't happen again now in the way that they did. You know, they'd have to be huge arenas, and they'd have to charge a fortune, and everything that goes with it, you know. And the interesting thing was that Carole King was the opening act. And so because she was the opening act in this case, I took 2 pictures of her. I mean, one that she purchased from me, actually. But the deal with this is that she premiered Tapestry. She sang all the songs off of Tapestry at the same James Taylor concert. I mean, like, who knew? I had no idea what a magnificent opportunity again. Yeah, so there she is. And then a little more Joni with Eric Anderson. This is out here at McCabe's Guitar Shop. And then we have Joni Mitchell at UCLA. And this is at the Troubadours of Folk Festival that happened in the 90s. And she really was at her peak. And she looked beautiful, played, all her different tunings on her guitars. And she was very happy, as you can see. Then we go to A&M Studios, since we're in the Herb Alpert building. And here at A&M Studios is Joni Mitchell recording Court and Spark, which is something I had no idea. I had a friend who was a friend of Henry Louis, who produced, I think, 13 albums of Joni's. And so I was invited to the session, and it was like, well, bring your camera, shoot some pictures. And I got there, and it was like, it was so intimate, it was so private, and you could tell it was not going to be a photo session of any sort. So it was like, but I was sitting right there in the control room, right, that wasn't a zoom shot or anything. It was right there. And at some point I went, I have to get my camera out. I have to get a shot. And I literally took 2 pictures, and this was one of them. And there aren't any other pictures of her recording that album, which is amazing. Sometimes when performers put a kibosh on what they will allow, it kind of to the detriment of them ultimately and history, because we don't get to see it, and they don't either, so. And then this is another shot at A&M, and Graham Nash on the left, and a wonderful singer named Leah Kunkel, who is Cass Elliott's sister. And sometimes people have asked who of these people, like, who am I close personal friends with? And a lot of these people I don't know personally. I would say 90%. But Leah became a friend, and we lost her recently, but she was fantastic. And there they are with Henry Louis, who is just one of the most respected producers ever, and at A&M. And there we have Joan Baez conducting a mariachi group for Gracias a la Vida. And when I was doing research for my book, there were some things I never found. There's some negatives some artists I wanted to put in there. But when I was looking through my files, I found these pictures, and I didn't even remember that I was there, because there were times I just shot a lot of stuff for over and over, day after day. And so there she is. And when she retired, or semi-retired, they asked her what her favorite song was, and she said, Gracias a la vida. So I thought these were pretty important pictures. So
I love the flowers on the floor.
the flowers, and then look at these people, their pants. I mean, I want those pants. I kind of have. But, and there she is later on with Bob Dylan. And so, you know, I mean, I also have always loved photographing the artists who've had something to say and had contributed to activism. In my book, I have a short chapter called Voices of Social Consciousness. So, of course, she's in there. And back to the A&M artists, Karen and Richard. And that's Karen. That shot has been in a biography about Karen Carpenter, and also a documentary that is a little hard to watch, but it's really, really well done. There's only one documentary on her. I forgot the name, but you could find it. So the Hollywood Bowl and the children's choir, and now I have friends who apparently were in the children's choir. Who knew? So they appreciate that. And then Karen behind the drums, which was the #1 love of her life, and also back earlier on, like even the 70s, women musicians were few and far between. And Karen was a great drummer. She was a great jazz drummer. She really didn't want to be a singer at the front of the stage. She wanted to be back there with her drums, and she was a killer player, But so there she is. And then I bring in Bonnie Raitt, because Bonnie Raitt was one of our first female musicians that had any modicum of success even back then. She was playing a resonator guitar and doing blues that she learned from these old blues guys that she also, brought to the public so people would appreciate them. So, she's been an activist in a number of different ways. And then she went from that, of course, to electric guitar and her signature Stratocat, Fender Strat. But she kind of opened up those doors for women musicians who would seriously play rock and roll. Then we got our friend Linda Ronstadt.
In that Impeach Nixon?
Yes, with her Impeach Nixon button, not to be missed. I even missed it until I was probably printing the photo and went, oh my God, what's that? So,
and if you haven't seen the Linda Ronstadt documentary,
that's
phenomenal.
A great documentary, yeah. And she played a Martin guitar, and Linda Ronstadt also played fiddle. I never had any pictures of her playing fiddle, but she did at the Palomino. This was in the documentary. This photograph was in the documentary. So that's at the Troubadour. And we're still trying to figure out what her tambourine says. It's something about swine. The Swinettes, perhaps. And her friend Emmylou Harris, back in the day. Back in the day, Baby Jackson. Baby Jackson. And I just talked to him last week about this photo. And, I've photographed him quite a bit, but I don't know if he hadn't really put the dots together. And then we were very fortunate. He came to see Mustangs of the West, one of our last performances last fall. And bought all our records, all our merch. It was just great. But anyway, I started out shooting him. This is 1978 at McCabe's, which of course near here. I've done a lot of shooting at McCabe's. They've just been such a wonderful place to hear music, and they always gave me full access to anything there. So. This I just stuck in because it was a historic moment. It was Don McLean, and that was back in New York, this little folk and bluegrass series I used to photograph, and this was the first time he sang American Pie. so that's kind of wild when I looked back on that. Laura Nero, I'm sure some of you, a lot of you, know Laura Nero. Thank you.
Yeah.
A few. Well, you'll know more because there's a documentary being done on her now, and so she was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame by Bette Midler a few years ago. So she, she's getting more attention finally, even though she's no longer with us.
And I don't. Whoa. I want to make sure we get through some of these iconic shots and also have time for questions because we're
I'll start talking fast.
Yeah, we're almost 15 minutes away because there's a whole nother thing coming in here after.
Miles Davis, Central Park Music Festival. The Manhattan Transfer with Ella Fitzgerald at the Grammys, rehearsing. Nina, the Nina story. Nina at the Village Gate in New York before I ever photographed her one-on-one. There's the photo for the Opera House in Paris that we did at her apartment.
That's amazing.
And there's that album cover with the sheet. She is wearing a white sheet. But it turned out beautifully. Staple singers, just because we've also seen the resurgence of Mavis on the right there. And she just is still at it and totally amazing. BB. Little Richard.
That is Little Richard looking a lot like Prince. Or when Prince started out, he looked a lot like Little Richard.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Pointer Sisters at the Troubadour. Chuck Berry.
That's beautiful.
That was the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame closed out one of their shows with this picture. So that was, and there's our Janice with a drink in her hand, of course, with some Southern comfort. That's one of my favorite shots I've ever done. But that was from that half roll of film. And for you, for Tiffany, one of her favorites, Velvet Underground. I never considered them my best shots because there was no light. It was at Max's Kansas City. But the two things I learned about it was the reason the light is so modeled on them is because they had these projections that Andy Warhol drew for them that were on their faces and on the. So it was difficult to shoot, but it was also the very last performance of the Velvet Underground with Lou Reed.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, Patti Smith out here at the Whiskey, early Patti. And then we have, this has been my, it's so funny because it's not the sharpest shot, but it's my most famous shot of Prince, and that's been displayed at the Grammy Museum. It's been in the Rolling Stone special Prince issue. It's been seen quite a bit, but not the backstage one. I wanted to throw that in for you. Yes, that was Prince backstage that night, his very first performance. He had a semi-R&B hit called I Want to Be Your Lover that was out at the time. So that was 79, something. Anyway, by 84, here we go, Purple Rain. This was the first, this was the premiere that he did along with the film at the Hollywood Palace. And yes, I was up front and center. I was shooting for the Hollywood Reporter, so I got great access for that. Then we're in the 80s now, so we had to include the Go-Go's and female musicians. And, of course, they just played Coachella and Cruel World, and they're...
And Roxy, they did a little
they're reformed and they sound great. So, and a lot of these photographs were in the Go-Go's documentary, which I also highly recommend. Cyndi Lauper, 80s.
She's doing her final tour.
She's
doing her final tour right now.
Yes, well, she was doing her final tour. Now she's doing her other final tour, I think.
If all the men can do it like this, she can.
The pinnacle of the 80s, Oh, Mickey, You're So Fine. And also just a quick mention of, it was the time of the music video. So I was shooting a lot of music video stills, and I was very fortunate that I got hired by Tony to shoot every music video she did. But, of course, this is the iconic shot. So. And here's Mr. Bowie. at Top of the Pops. Depeche Mode, Roy and Katie.
Wow.
And this I just threw in Martha Davis. We did a shoot of the motels. It was at the Sherman Oaks Galleria. You just never know where you're going to find a spot, a location. And then we just jumped to the end here with the Beatles. I added this section in my book because I don't know how I left them out before. But that was from a Wing show in 1976 where Ringo got up with Paul on stage, which is, again, happening where Paul and Ringo get on stage together, which is amazing, I think. George at a press conference in Beverly Hills when he was premiering his Dark Horse record label. Ringo on Hollywood Boulevard. John and Yoko at a shoot that no one seems to know about, that you cannot Google, that I was at Philharmonic Hall in New York, that has a much longer story, but I know we don't have a lot of time. But that's kind of it. That's the cover of my book. And most of these
there's
photos
a lot
are
more in the
there.
book. So what I want to do, because Sherry's going to hang out. If you want to buy a book, she'll sign it. You can ask her a question, but I want to see, we have a little bit of time to see if any of the students have any questions. I'm like totally turned around. So is that August? Yeah.
Being in the role of what?
So if because you're in a band,
Yeah.
how do you feel about other people capturing you on stage? Do you feel good about giving that control away?
Oh, yeah. It generally, well, okay, yes. I'm in a band that does love to be photographed, and it's an all-female band, but I would also say that we love it when someone will show us the pictures in advance, so if something doesn't, isn't appealing to us to be to be posted, we try not to take too much control, but there is some limited control.
And you can ask for it.
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
Like, I'll let you shoot the whole show if you let me see the pictures, right?
Yeah.
We make deals like that.
Definitely. I'm having trouble seeing it. Anybody else? Yep, right here.
So I'm going to repeat the question so everybody can hear it. How much are you directing behind the scenes shoot versus they're saying, well, this is what I want to do? Like, how much do you tell them versus they're telling you?
It's a very good question. It really depends on the circumstances, because if it's for a record company, they will often come to you and say, this is our concept. This is how we would like the artist to look. And if it's a studio shoot, especially something like that, But and then there are other ones where the artists are in control, and they know what they want to look like. They want to present a certain image. And then, I love shoots where you're, out and about, and you find, cool place, a cool background, or, if it's kind of overused, but going out to the desert or going, to some natural environment, and maybe one that hasn't been seen. So, they just capture something different. So, yeah, it depends who you're shooting for. Sure.
One last one out there. Go ahead.
Oh, you're putting this brain to work here. One that didn't work out. It usually has to do more. Well, I'm going to liken it to this. When we're all shooting film, well, or even now, I would say digitally, you might be working with an artist and you do this setup and then you do another setup, and, or even with a show, you shoot at the beginning of the show, and then, if I have the opportunity to go through the whole show, it's like sometimes the very first picture you take is it. It's the most, it's crazy. And then other times it's the very last one. And I know that's not exactly answering your question, but that's what came to mind. You never really know. I mean, you get a sense, but it's as much a interactive experience, for the artist, whether they're on stage or whether you're photographing them in a planned environment or on a set. So
that idea of the first shot, and I'll let you ask your question, sorry. The difference right now between film and digital too, like, do you miss or do you like the idea of being, like, you wouldn't know the shots you got until you went and printed. Like, you weren't able to look, right?
Oh, yes, yes. I love digital for instant gratification. I mean, that couldn't be, I mean, I come home from a shoot and I'm just, I'll be up all night looking at the photographs. Whereas, yeah, it was hard. It was hard, and you never knew if something had gone wrong technically either when you were shooting film or slides, because you'd have to take it to the lab, and then you'd wait overnight, and then you'd get your slides or your proof sheet, and that's when you'd know that you actually did it right, or that something didn't go wrong in the camera. There's always that technical. I mean, I just did a shoot, and I think it was on the Dionne Warwick shoot I just did a few months ago, and I always have two cameras strapped to me, and my newer camera started. It was like it kept going like this; it wouldn't focus, and I was like, "Oh shoot!" It's like there's nothing you can do. You can't, run off stage or run out of the concert venue, and so you just have to wing it. I go to the other camera, and I better get it all on that one. I always travel with backup everything, cards, batteries, camera bodies, lenses.
That's a good tip. Bring your backup stuff. This is going to be our last question, and then we're going to roll out into the hall. Sherry will sign books. You can ask more questions. Go ahead.
That is a multiple choice answer. But that's a good question. It's a good question. I have people like the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame that actually come to me for images. I also am with Getty Images, and they license the work that I've given them. And not to say anything negative about Getty, but they do take a very large percentage. So I try and license my work directly anytime I can. And then, yeah, I find my images online, on YouTube, being produced as bootleg T-shirts, all sorts of things that are hard to keep up with. And sometimes it's not worth it because I know they're not making anything on it. And it's just, oh, you want to give me a T-shirt. But in the bigger picture, yeah, it's hard to keep track of all that, especially with digital, because they just, when you used to have a picture and you made a copy of it, it lost resolution, it lost quality. But now, you can grab anything from anywhere, and sometimes it's annoying to look at someone's photo with their photo credit right in the middle. I try and, and so I try and post low-res versions myself so people can't, make big blow-ups and do big prints for their homes, without coming to me or not even knowing that I shot it. So it's a problem. It's a problem. You do as much as you can, to solve that problem. I do a lot of research. I spend too much time capturing my own photos.
Maybe you need a student researcher, right?
I need a student researcher. I'd love to have an intern to help.
I did want to say that. Sherry asked me earlier, like,
yes.
Sherry needs interns. So if you're interested in this stuff, I'll connect you up with her, go up to her at the end of this. But we're going to move out so that the next group can come back in. But thank you so much, Sherry.
Thank you, Tiffany.
Thank you for coming.
Yeah. Finally. We did it. Yay.